In absence of a board chair, Dr. Scott, as the senior board member, will you please call the meeting to order?
Good evening, and welcome to the November 21st Special Call Board Meeting. I'm very excited to have all of our family and friends present with us today, and also to the ones that's online. I call the November 21st Special Call Board Meeting to order. Prior to this meeting, the oath of officer ceremony took place. The minutes for this special meeting shall reflect the following at 6:02 p.m. Board member Angela Nash oath was administered by Mr. Larry Smalls. Board member Nikki Porter's oath was administered by was administered by Dr. Baron Davis. Board member Joe Trapp's oath was administered by Mrs. Martha B. Trapp. And board member Tamika Washington's oath was administered by Mrs. Cynthia J. Schuler. Now, may I have a motion to suspend board policy BD for this meeting in order to elect new board officers?
Dr. Scott?
Yes, Mrs. McFadden.
I move to suspend the language in policy BD, which states the officers are elected and sworn in annually at the last meeting of the board in June, at which the last order of business will be the election of the officers for the November 21st, 2022, to allow for officer elections to be backfill vacant officer positions.
Suspension of this policy will be only for this meeting only.
For this meeting only, okay. Per policy BD, Dr. Davis will take nominations for the office of chair of the board.
Dr. Scott, just as a point of order, if we can get the policy in the motion to reflect that the suspension of this policy is for this meeting only.
The suspension of this policy will be only for the November 21st, 2022 meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. McFadden.
Dr. Scott, if just for a point of order, I apologize. After calling the meeting to order, if we can get a motion for the approval of the agenda and then a second, and then we'll suspend the policy BD. I apologize for not bringing that to your attention.
Thank you so much. May I have a motion to second?
We'll get a motion to approve the agenda.
To approve the agenda?
Dr. Scott?
Yes, Mrs. McFadden.
I move to approve the agenda for the November 21st, 2022 special called board meeting.
Do I have a second?
I second.
It's been properly moved and second. Thank you.
Now we need to vote.
We'll call for the vote. It's been properly moved and voted 6 yes, 0 abstentions. And Mrs. Agostini, due to a family engagement prior to the new date, is not with us tonight, so I want to make note of that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. Dr. Scott, this time, I guess we can go back to the suspension of board policy BD. And then a second for board policy BD, again with the motion stating that the suspension of the language is just for this board meeting only. Let's do it again.
Okay, yes, sir. I move to suspend the language in policy BD, which states the officers are elected and sworn in annually at the last meeting of the board in June, at which the last order of business will be the election of officers for the November 21st, 2022, to allow for officer elections to backfill vacant officers for the November 21st, 2022 meeting only.
It's been properly moved and stated. May I have a second, please?
Second.
We've had properly moved and second by Mrs. Nash. Oh, I thought that was Ms. White. Okay, second by Mrs. Nash. We'll call for the vote. Are there any discussion? We'll call for the vote. Now, are you gonna go back to this? Vote passes 6-0. Thank you. Per policy BD, Dr. Davis will take nominations for the office of Chair of the Board. Dr. Davis?
Thank you, Dr. Scott. Nominations are now open for the office of Chair. Are there any nominations for Chair?
Dr. Davis?
Yes, Dr. Scott.
I would like to nominate Lindsay Agostini for the Board Chair.
Lindsay Agostini has been nominated for the position of Board Chair. I have had a previous conversation with Ms. Agostini and received in writing her confirmation, should she be nominated for a position in her absence, that she is willing to accept any position that she has been nominated for. Therefore, confirmation of acceptance nomination has been communicated to my office. Are there any other nominations for Chair? Are there any other nominations for Chair? Seeing that we have no further nominations for the position of Chair, Ms. Agostini is duly elected as a Chair for the remainder of this school year. Let's give her a round of applause and congratulations. In absence of the chair not being present, with the chair not being present with us today, I'll have to continue the nominations until a vice chair has been nominated. And once the vice chair has been nominated, I will turn over the nominations at that time to the vice chair to conduct the remainder of the meeting, which will be the nominations of secretary and any other business that is outlined on our agenda. So at this time, the floor is now open for nominations for the position of vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
Dr.
Members of the
Davis,
board?
I vote to nominate Dr. Monica Scott for the position of Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees for the remainder of the 2022 to 2023 school year.
Thank you, Ms. Nash. Dr. Scott has been nominated for the position of Vice Chair for the remainder of the 2022-2023 school year. Dr. Scott, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Dr. Scott accepts the nomination. Are there any further nominations for the position of Vice Chair for the 2022-2023, the remainder of the 2022-2023 school year? Are there any other nominations for the position of Vice Chair? Seeing that there are no further nominations for the position of Vice Chair, Dr. Scott has been duly elected by her peers to serve as Vice Chair for the remainder of the 2022-2023 school year. Let's give Dr. Scott a round of applause. Dr. Scott, the office of the superintendent now yields back to you for the conduct the remainder of this board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Davis, and thank you to my colleagues as well. The floor is now open for nominations for Secretary of Richland II School Board for the 2022-2023 school year. Do I have any nominations for Secretary?
Madam Vice Chair, I nominate Angela Nash for the position of Secretary of the Board of Trustees for the remainder of the 2022-2023 school year.
Do we have any more nominations? Mrs. Angela Nash, you've been nominated for Secretary for 2022-2023. Do you accept that nomination?
I accept the nomination.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other nominations for Secretary for 2022-2023? Have to do it 3 times, so I'll repeat that again. Are there any other nominations for Secretary for 2022-2023? There are no more nominations. Congratulations to Mrs. Nash. Let's give our round of applause. For new business action requested, we're going to go to 3.3 delegations, certifications of delegations for the 2022 South Carolina School Board Association Delegate Assembly. We do have 2 seats, one for one person and one for an alternate. Do we have any nominations to serve for Richland School District 2 as a delegate for the 2022-2023 South Carolina School Board Association Delegate Assembly?
I nominate Dr. Scott and I'm not really sure. Sorry. Okay. Well, I have a question. Can we nominate up to 3? Is that correct?
Go ahead.
We nominate a delegate and then we nominate an alternate. This is in case if we nominate and split our delegates by 3, just if someone is unable to make it, we may lose the ability to vote our 9 votes. So we do 1 delegate and then we do 1 alternate.
Is it mandatory that you only have 1 delegate, or is it possible to have multiple delegates during this time?
It's possible to have multiple delegates. My recommendation to the board is if you do multiple delegates, I would only do 2 multiple delegates and 1 alternate. 2 multiple delegates and 1 alternate. The delegates, we have 9 votes at the delegate assembly, so 1 will be awarded 5, 1 will be awarded 4, and then the alternate will fill in just in case someone could not make it.
Is it the will of the board that we nominate 2 delegates and 1 alternate?
Yes.
Nominations are now open.
I nominate Dr. Monica Scott for a delegate and and LaShonda McFadden and Nikita Porter as an alternate.
Unfortunately, I will not be at that meeting, so I cannot serve as a delegate, but I do appreciate the nomination for that. We'll give them an opportunity. Do we have, Mrs. McFadden, do you accept the nomination for delegate?
Yes.
Okay. We do have 1 open slot for a delegate and 1 more alternate. Do we have anyone up here?
I nominate Nikita Porter.
Mrs. Porter, do you accept the offer to serve as a delegate?
I do.
Thank you. And we're looking for 1 alternate.
I nominate Joe Trapp.
Just remember that alternate has to be someone who's actually going to serve at the conference, attending the conference. Yes, you can.
Madam Vice Chair, I'd like to nominate Mr. Joe Trapp for the alternate delegate.
Mr. Joe Trapp, do you accept the nomination as an alternate?
I accept.
Okay, great. We do have our 2 delegates. That will be Mrs. McFadden and Mrs. Nikia Porter as our delegates, and the alternate, Mr. Joe Trapp.
Let's restate the motion with
So I'm going to read the recommended action. It says to approve LaShonda McFadden, Nikia Porter, and Joe Trapp to serve as a delegate and an alternate to serve as an alternate. Let me start over. To approve LaShonda McFadden and Nikia Porter to serve as a delegate and Joe Trapp to serve as an alternate for the 2022 South Carolina School Board Association Delegate Assembly. May I have a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. May we take a vote? Are there any discussions? May we take a vote? Six yes, unanimous. New business action requested, 3.4 South Carolina School Board Region 8 Director nomination.
Dr. Scott?
Yes, Mrs. McFadden.
I nominate Dr. Monica Scott for the SCSBA Region 8 Director for the remainder of the term vacated by Ms. Amelia Mackey.
Thank you. Do we have any other nominations for the South Carolina School Board Association Region 8 Director nomination? Do we have any other nominations for the South Carolina School Board Association Region 8 Director nominations? And final call, do we have any more nominations for the South Carolina School Board Association Region 8 Director nomination? With that being said, I will accept as the South Carolina School Board Association Region 8 Director nomination.
Let's give Dr. Scott a congratulations, round of applause.
I would like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Dr. Scott?
Yes, Mrs. McFadden.
I make a motion to adjourn the November 21st, 2022 special called board meeting.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.